Okay, this is step 4 of the process of putting it together, the DIY version of the Halloween Skulls animatronic skull. So step 4 involves more wiring. We're going to have our soldering iron out again. It also involves the LED lights for the eyes. And this is a finished one. Of course, there's 2 for each skull. So to save some time, I've already done one of them all up. I've already cut and prepared the wire. I'll show you on the screen right here the wire that I use. That's the tag off of the top of one of the spools. I have, of course, red, green, blue for RGB, and the white is the anode. These have also, all except for one, have already been pre-stripped and tinned just to save time, but I'll go through the process because it's the same with every wire, with one of them. This is what the packet looks like where the LEDs come in. We get them from Mouser Electronics, and that's in the parts list. And there's a close-up of this right here on screen. And then over here I'm using a microscope here, and you can see, maybe you can see the one LED there in the center of that little bullseye. That is one of the ones that come out of this package. There's 25 in this package. I'll put the pack away, and you can see the close-up here of the one sitting on the microscope. Now, if you don't happen to have a microscope at home, this is an old, well-used dissecting scope from school, which I got for nothing, and I cut a little plastic round piece of plexiglass on it that I can spin around. Bought from Home Depot a little Lazy Susan attachment there, so that I don't have to keep repositioning this to get at all the different tabs with the soldering iron. If you're just making one of these or 2 sets of eyes, you probably don't want to go to all that trouble. But if you do a lot of soldering, that might be a handy tool to have for certain things. But if you don't happen to have a microscope in your house, you can still get this done. A little hack to get this done so that you can zoom in on this tiny little LED on the back of that tiny little LED is get a Kleenex box. I'll show you some pictures here on the screen. Take the Kleenex box and rip out all the plastic at the top there and cut the side out of it. You can put a little piece of 2-sided tape inside it and get a little gooseneck lamp or hold a flashlight on a clamp or something and shine it in there. And then you can just lay your iPhone or Android phone or whatever phone you have has a camera on it right out in the top so that it's aimed at the LED, and zoom way in on it. And that will give you almost as much magnification as I have. I mean, my magnification on this microscope is only about 10 times. So it's good enough to get the job done, and if you don't happen to have a microscope, that's a pretty good solution. So I'm going to continue on and do this in order. As I mentioned, the first one's already complete, so that's the complete version of there with the LED on the top. And this is what slides into the eyeball when we're done, and that will be in step 5. So first thing we got to do is tin all of the spots on the LED. There's 4 contacts, and you can see them there, and I'll show you in succession after they've been tinned what it looks like close up. You can see that on the screen as I'm working, and I'm just going to do the same process exactly on this LED, where it's just got to find where things are in the microscope and get a little bit of solder on each connector, on each contact rather. Okay, easy enough. If you haven't done that before and you're not used to working with a soldering iron under high magnification, it may take you a little while to feel the position of the soldering iron and make sure you're hitting it in the right spot. I've done it quite a bit with this, so I get used to it. Now what we're going to do is on each of the 4 wires, or the 8 wires actually, there would be twice as many sitting out here on the table because of the second one. We're going to just I use a regular pair of clippers to strip these just because my stripper doesn't go down this small. This is, I believe, 30 gauge wire. It says so on that tag. Now I'm just going to wrap that like around my finger. This wire also is waxy finish on it, so it's a little slippery. And if you were to grab this on the end and pull it without giving it an extra wrap, it would probably just slip right off or slip through your fingers. So I'm going to just strip away a tiny bit of the, that's it, of the wire there. And you want to leave this, it's a very tiny piece. As you can tell, these LEDs are only 3 millimeters each direction, a 3 millimeter square. And within those 3 millimeters are 4 contacts. So if you strip the wire too long, there'll be a lot of extra wire hanging off the edge, which you can't do because it won't fit inside the eyeball, or hanging on the inside, and they could touch each other and short out. So we need very, very tiny connectors here. So I've made it small, but right now I'm going to tin it, and then I'm going to trim it back even more. And sometimes when I finally look at it, the final version under the microscope, I have to trim it back even further than that. So I'm just going to sit here and tin this wire here, trying to make it so you can possibly see what I'm doing. Okay, we'll try this. All right, I'm going to tin the wire, get a little extra solder up there, put it together, and there it is. So now the end of that wire is tinned. And now I'm going to trim it right down almost to the end. I show a close-up picture of the 4 wires all cut and clipped, and you can barely tell that there's a piece of wire there. Now I'm going to bring that over, and actually I usually start with the white wire since these are already prepped for you. The other side I'm going to deal with later after we've soldered them all on. So I bring the white wire over to the first contact, and you'll notice in the close-up picture that there is a little green line down the center and a little green square in one spot facing towards one of the pins. That pin is the anode, and here is the chart that shows you which wires go to which. Actually, I didn't label the color of the anode, but by process of elimination, you will know that that is white, and that is a kind of an industry standard for that. So I'm going to come in here with the soldering iron on the microscope and touch in the last thing, and I'll show you a close-up of what that, as close as I could get, is what that looks like when you're doing it. And just the tinned wire and the tinned connector melt together, and there we go. That's a good contact for the white wire. All right. Now, below the white wire is the red contact, so I'm going to use the red wire next and bring that down. First thing I'm going to do is look at it under the microscope and make sure that the contact, the wire isn't too long. The stripped portion of the wire isn't too long, and it isn't. That came out good. So now I'm going to attach that wire, and that's done. Okay. By the way, I've got in the center of my magnifying glass here, I have where I stick this down, that's a piece of 2-sided tape, that white square, and that allows me to not need another hand to hold that thing in place. I'm going to use a tiny screwdriver here to get down and push down on that. There it is. Push down on that. Now I'm going to, I spun it around so I got the other 2 at the same angle as I soldered these 2, and I'm just going to bend these wires back so they're out of my way. Okay, bend them back there. Now when I look in the microscope, I've got on my right side here the 2 wires I want to do next. Right across from the red wire, according to my chart here, is the green wire. We're just going to place that in same way as the others. And I'll solder that right into place. Let's see, get it in there. Okay, there's a good connection there. And now the remaining wire, the blue wire, goes on the last lug. And that it's important to get the right ones in because when you hook them up to the controller board, you have to know which one is the white, red, green, and blue. Otherwise, when you turn up blue, one of the eyes might be blue and one of the eyes might be some other color. So I'm going to look at it now under the microscope. And this one is just a tad long. So I am going to snip this one back just a tiny bit. And it's hard to even see without doing it under the microscope. But I've disconnected most of it there. I've snipped off most of it there. Now, remember to take my glasses off before I look in here. And there it goes. Okay, and this is what it looks like when they're all wired up. Now I'm taking this off and just straighten it out so that all the wires come out straight. And I'll see if I can get a close-up of that end now all soldered up. And stretch all the wires out. Now, as you see in this one, and here's a close-up of this, you can see how I've twisted these wires together. This kind of wire tends to stay when you twist them like that, which is good, because it keeps them from getting all tangled up inside the skull. So it's just to neaten it up and make sure that the wires aren't getting wrapping themselves around something they're not supposed to inside the skull. And I'm basically just pinching this end and twisting the top as I go. And that makes it pretty good. Then I've got these 4 wires here, and at this point I'm going to cut them all even, because they seldom come out exactly even. And then I'm going to strip this end. This end I'm going to strip longer, because I want to put them on the, these are going to be inserted into the push-in connectors on the controller board. Now, one thing I didn't mention at the beginning is, because I had already prepped all these wires, is that I've made them all about 8 inches long. So we start with the wires all being 8 inches long, and that's enough room to get from the controller board, snake through that part of the skull around to the back and where the eyes are. So, and that's my dog barking at something outside. Hopefully she will stop soon. All right, I strip each wire, again wrapping it around my finger so I don't pull it, especially while it's attached to the LED at the other end. I don't want to rip the connector off. So wrap it around my finger. I've probably been out of the shot there. I wrap it around my finger and I strip the wire, just like this one, but I'm doing the same with all of them. And take the insulation off. And then, of course, I will twist all the wires, and then, because these are so thin, I'm going to tin them before I put them in the connector. Now, I did not tin the power wires when I put them in the same kind of connector, because it improves the grip on the connector, but those wires are so much thicker that there's a little more meat on the wire for those connectors to grip onto. These are so thin that I'm going to make them a little bit stiffer and thicker by adding some solder on them as I tin them, and then they also grip fairly well in there too. So that's my plan here. I'll put them here on the table and get them all tinned up for you. There we go. There we go. 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now, retwist this wire back to the end. And then when they're all up there, I'll just trim them all at the same length. Okay, making sure, of course, that I have all of these off. Then I need I have it right here. This is the eye shaft from the skull parts, and you're going to insert all of these wires into the thin end, because that's where the LED needs to end up. It's going to get pushed inside of the eyeball. So I just fit all the tinned wires. Also, tinning the wires helps it fit through here, because if they were all individual strands, they'd be getting caught in the side of the inside of the plastic, and you wouldn't be able to pass it through. So it is a very tiny hole, and they're very tiny wires. So it may take a try or two to get them in. Once they get in, they should go okay. And we got all but one. So I'm going to put that one through on its own. That's the green wire there. Should go through okay now. There they are. All right, now they're all in. Pull it right down. And now the only thing left is we had to do something to this so that during operation, the LED in the eye doesn't get pushed out like this and be touching the front of the eyeball inside or get some weird position. It has to stay down here really tight. And what I've been doing before, well, what I do is I try to like super glue it to the end here so that it can't pull out. Super glue does not work on this wire. This waxy wire is it's made out of like the same material that they make the bottle out of that super glue goes in. So super glue does not stick to it. So I'm going to just push this over here, and we're going to take a little break in the film here until my hot glue gun heats up. And at that point, I'm going to put a dab of hot glue right on the top of that. And you can see right here, I'm placing the hot glue gun down, and then hot gluing it, and there's your dab of glue right on the top. And that's what it's going to look like. Now in our next segment, we will be putting these into the skull with the eye mechanism, which requires 2 more servos, these 2 pieces here, and of course the controller board and the whole rest of the skull, actually, because this is the last part. The front, gets mounted into the front of the skull along with the controller card, and then the 2 pieces go together, and that's our final segment. So you're almost there. After you've wired these up, we're going to finish putting together the eye mechanism, mount it in the front of the skull, and then we'll have a full skull and we'll run a routine on it. Okay, that's it right now until section 5. We'll see you there.